Authorities in Moscow, Idaho are seeking the public's help in identifying the occupant of a white Hyundai Elantra made between 2011 and 2013 and seen near the off-campus home where 4 University of Idaho students were murdered last month. Police say they could have critical information about the case.
New surveillance footage obtained by NewsNation shows 2 of the victims walking in downtown Moscow with an unidentified man just hours before they were murdered. An attorney for the family of Kaylee Goncalves raised doubts last week over how Moscow police have conducted the investigation thus far. Let's watch.
Once again, we haven't gotten any information from the police. The communication has been very poor. It really continues to be poor. I've sent over a couple questions over the last few days that still haven't gotten answered. The whole thing is trust us, trust us, trust us, and have faith in the investigation, and we're making these right decisions. Well, if you're missing out on video because you go in on the 22nd,
right. Joining us now with details into the investigation is NewsNation senior national correspondent Brian Entin. Brian, great to have you with us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so tell us what the latest is. What is the new information with this, with the surveillance footage of the car, et cetera?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the basics sort of remain the same. Still no known suspect or persons of interest. Police are still staying very, very tight-lipped. They still continue to look for this Hyundai Elantra. At last check, there were 22,000 Hyundai Elantras in that time frame. Registered in both Idaho and Washington, and they're trying to go through every single one of those registrations. So it's obviously taking a really, really long time, even with the help of the FBI. So they're still asking the public for help. There was some surveillance video that came about from a gas station that shows a white car. We're not sure if that's the exact car that they're looking for. There's also a landlord near the house where the murders happened who I talked to, who says he picked up a light-colored car around the time of the murders, right on a road near where the murders happened, that he also submitted that video surveillance to the authorities. He said the FBI was trying to enhance his video. So behind the scenes, a lot happening, but they say they still haven't identified the actual car that they're looking for.
Yeah, and this speaks to, a question that I think so many people have had about this whole story, which, there's surveillance. We're surveilled without our knowledge all the time. Everybody has security cameras. There's so much video footage everywhere. So the idea that, this could happen and we'd have just nothing whatsoever, no grainy or sketchy video footage of anyone near the house at that time always seemed baffling. So now it sounds like maybe they do have that kind of stuff, but they haven't been able to turn that into an actionable lead, even if they have had that information for some time, or is it this is newly come to them because they're not being very transparent about when they got this surveillance footage.
Yeah, so the surveillance footage you're looking at right there, we obtained that over the weekend. That's video of Maddie and Kaylee walking in downtown Moscow just hours before the murders. And they're talking about a man named Adam, who we've come to find out is actually a bartender at one of the bars in town, and has apparently been cleared and is not a suspect right now, according to the lawyer for the Goncalves family. So that video, we know that police had 2 or 3 days after the murders. We were just able to track it down over the weekend. So you make a good point. I mean, there's a lot of video that police have had that just hasn't been made public. Like I was mentioning, the one landlord who gave up video, that was also just a couple of days after the murder. So police have had it since then. So there's clearly a lot that they have that they haven't been sharing. But what's interesting is when they talk about the Hyundai Elantra, they've released a stock photo. So it's just a generic photo of a Hyundai Elantra. They haven't actually released a photo of the actual car that they're looking for, which leads us to believe that they don't have the car on video, or at least they don't have a clear image of the car.
Yeah, my understanding was that, there was a lot of pushback. There was a lot of concern about this revelation that they did, in fact, have some of this information, the video footage of the light-colored car, and now this kind of stunning video from just hours before the murders took place, in which there was an unidentified man walking with these two young women. Not that he's necessarily a suspect, but it is in really stark contrast to the messaging that we've heard in the weeks since the murders, which is that there was just absolutely nothing here. And part of what was defining the coverage of the story was how mysterious the circumstances of all of this were. The gap between that and what we're now seeing doesn't give a lot of confidence in the way that law enforcement is handling this case. And I saw specifically criticisms that if you're going to rely on the public's help to track down this vehicle, time is of the essence, and questions about why it was that the public wasn't made aware of the fact that they should be tracking down this Hyundai Elantra much sooner. Are those concerns that you've heard echoed from the family, the families of the victims?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Especially the Gonsalves family, their attorney, even last night, again, was talking to me about how he is concerned with the police investigation right now. One of his big concerns is like the first 48 hours after the murders happened, because obviously now there's 60 FBI agents working the case. There's more than a dozen state detectives also helping Moscow PD, which is pretty small. But his concern is, right after it happened, those first 48 hours before all of those additional resources were able to come in, why didn't they do more? Why didn't they put out some kind of alert to the community? Hey, do you know of anyone in this small town who missed work, who, has injuries on their arms? Because obviously there were, we know that some of the victims fought back during the attack. He just feels like enough wasn't necessarily done early on, and that perhaps this, relatively small police department that hasn't dealt with a murder in 7 years. So in some ways, you can't really blame them. I mean, it's this beautiful, quiet, small town that doesn't really have much crime. But he's questioning, should they have handed things over much earlier to a federal agency that has more experience in this kind of thing.
My understanding, I believe since last we spoke with you, is there was a bit of new information on the, without getting into the very gruesome details, the conditions they were found in. The two of the girls were actually found even in the same bed. They were very violent, very deep stab wounds. Would not have been recoverable. Might have been swifter kind of death situation. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so the reason that we're obviously interested in that, and you mentioned it's gruesome, it's, you don't like to talk about it, especially of what these families are going through, but it's because there's this whole question of who was the target. Was there a target? Is it possible, the victim with the most substantial wounds was the target of the killer? And we've learned through the Gonsalves family that they say their daughter, Kaylee, had significantly, more serious stab wounds than her best friend, Maddie, who she was sleeping in the same bed as. Does that mean that Kaylee was the target? Or does it perhaps mean that she also woke up and was fighting back, and that's why she was, had worse injuries? We really just don't know. We also don't really know how her injuries compare to the other two victims who were on the second floor. And again, that's another thing that the families are frustrated by, is some of the communication. They've streamlined it now. The police are the ones doing most of the talking and releasing of information. But early on, you had the prosecutor talking, you had the coroner, who the family say was calling them directly and giving them information. And again, it's a small town. The coroner is a local attorney in town. They question, does she even have the expertise? Should she have been calling families and giving out information? A quadruple homicide like this, 4, college students stabbed. Again, a lot of people here are just questioning, like, are they really equipped to handle an investigation like this, something that would be serious in any big city or anywhere in the country, let alone, a very, very small, quiet town.
Brian, I also want to just ask you about this vape store owner who says that Kaylee had a stalker and that the girls walked in a group because they were afraid of her being targeted. What do we know about that claim?
Yeah, so I interviewed that vape store owner. According to him, Kaylee and Maddie would come into the vape store, pretty regularly. He said he had encountered them 6 or 7 times. So the store is not far from their home. And he says the last time that he spoke to the girls, it was about 3 weeks before the murders. And he says they came in as a big group, and that they were discussing how they were in a group because Kaylee had a stalker and they were all sticking together to keep her safe. He didn't have a lot of specifics about, who the stalker might be. But it was certainly interesting considering this stalker, theory has come up over and over again. We know that he's spoken to police. Police actually came into his store looking for surveillance video at one point. So, just another element to the mystery. But the bottom line is we still don't really know whether Kaylee had a stalker, and her family says that she never brought up a specific person to them, especially her sister, who she was super close to. They talked about everything. Her sister says if she really had a stalker, she likely would have, it would have come up on, they talk like multiple times per day.
Oh, incredible. Well, Brian, thank you so much for your updated reporting on that. Great work.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And we'll be back with more Rising right after this.